Bronny James going to the NBA. Without a doubt, this is all about LeBron. And Bronny at the NBA Combine was saying, it's never been my dream really to play with my dad. I just want to, play in the NBA. It's fine. I think every kid has been outside shooting hoops and thought about, this is me in the NBA. Didn't last very long for me. Lasted a bit longer for Chad, but not very long for me. Maybe by a week, yeah. But let's look at the signs that tell us that he's going to be drafted. Not just signed as an undrafted free agent, but drafted. He dipped the toe in the water, as many players will do, to see if they are draftable players, right? Well, the deadline is at 11:59 p.m., and we've already heard from Rich Paul, who's the CEO of Clutch Sports, saying, yeah, he's going to the draft. And you've got the other details here. He declined over 10 invites with players, according to a report. And that's after he had health issues to begin the season last year in college basketball, after he averaged less than 5 points per game in the NCAA season, and after the USC Trojans, where he played, sucked. Then he goes to the NBA Combine and the clamoring for, he's really helped his draft stock. ESPN right now, the ESPN top 100 basketball players for the draft, he's listed at 55th out of 100. Guess where the Lakers' second-round pick is? 55th. I don't think that's a coincidence either. They drafted 22 and 55. And after doing this and declining all of these workouts and only accepting workouts for two specific teams, the Phoenix Suns and the Los Angeles Lakers, they want us to believe that it's not about father and son playing together, when it has been the entire time. And for the hosts last week, we got into this on ESPN. They were like, he's no Nepo baby. Rich Paul is telling us he is with this quote. Here is Bronny while being asked from Chris Haynes, a Bleacher Report, from Clutch Sports CEO Rich Paul. Some may feel like he's getting an opportunity because of his father, and I think that's a very naive logic, especially in America. When you look at America as a whole, it's built on the nepotism. No one's having this conversation about Jim Dolan. He owns the Knicks, but his dad built a business. There's talent required to play in the NBA, to be a first-round draft pick. There are certain things you look for and qualities that one would look for to be a first-round pick. The Phoenix Suns don't have a second-round pick, so if they want him, they're going to draft him 17th. They've been anointed as the team that can actually receive a workout from Bronny James throughout this draft process. But you have the other thing, other than talent, then you would have your father and nepotism. But what I don't hear about is DJ Rodman or Andrei Stojakovic. You've got Jamal Mashburn Jr., DJ Wagner, who will be a lottery pick. He's now at Arkansas following Calipari. Ashton Hardaway and Ryan Mutombo. There are many players that, I guess, according to Rich Paul, because of Jim Dolan, who, you don't have to have a lot of talent to inherit a dead guy's wealth. You do in order to be drafted, unless it's like, LeBron says, the king saith, you will take my son, and you will draft him where I say that he will be drafted. You will work out my son if we grant you access. And Rich Paul continues about why there's only a couple of teams that are going to work him out. We're still figuring it out. Many teams have called. It's a matter of hashing out workouts and figuring out who is real and who is not. There are only 2 or 3 teams that might take him. That's how I'm going to approach that. He continues. The Lakers need to look at Bronny like everyone else. If they value him enough and he's there, that's great. If it's not the Lakers, that's great. I won't be mad if it's not. It's obvious that people hear the conversation around the dad and son playing together, but that's not our focus. If it happens organically, great. I'm not building on that. I'm not putting unrealistic expectations on Bronny. He's far from a finished product, but he has a hell of a start. He's positioned well. I don't see him not getting drafted. But if it got to a point where the situations don't make sense and we needed to go undrafted, that's fine. We needed to go undrafted. And he's saying that it's anything but organic. And that goes not just from Rich Paul or the James father and son duo, that goes to the media as well. All of a sudden, after what we witnessed in the college basketball season, he's gone from he needs a lot more work to 54th in the ESPN Top 100. And in mock drafts, I mean, if you're only going to work out for 2 or 3 teams, Chad, you know you're getting drafted. You remove your name from the eligibility if you really don't believe that. Any player would. And here he is knowing that, and Rich Paul's telling us between the lines here, he's going to be drafted, and he's going to be drafted by the team that Rich Paul and LeBron James tell the team to select him. It's bizarre, it's weird, and it's embarrassing for the NBA, quite frankly, that you could have a player, and there will be others, that will declare prima nocta on the organization. And when they want to take a draft spot, they will take that draft spot. And LeBron James will do that if the Lakers want to keep him around for another 2 or 3 years. And they do. This two-way player thing. We also heard a quote from Rich Paul not too long ago. We're not into it was a report, not a quote, that Clutch Sports isn't really fond of the two-way player option, where he goes undrafted. He's a part of the 3 players on a roster that can go to and from a roster when a team has an injury issue. They're not about that. They want him drafted. So does ESPN, clearly. They're trying to match it up with the Lakers' second-round pick. And if you're not working out for an organization, and many scouts don't think you're draftable at all, by the way, just go to last week and what the scouts were saying. I mean, you're setting yourself up to be drafted by the Lakers, even though they want us to believe that it's organic.
Well, and going off the players' sons, lineage, Nepo babies that you were talking about, I got 2 more names for you, Marcus and Jeffrey Jordan. The 2 sons who played college basketball for the actual greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan. One played at Illinois, one played at UCF. They didn't play in the NBA because they weren't good enough. And to argue that you're being naive if you're calling Bronny James a Nepo baby by citing another Nepo baby and why this is okay, but this isn't, but now we're going to have this and it's going to be fine, that's not a good argument to make if you're trying to prove that he's not a Nepo baby. Jim Dolan is a Nepo baby. And Rich Paul isn't wrong in that American business has been built on that since the start of America. It's very difficult to lose insane amounts of wealth in America. And there are a lot of idiot sons and idiot daughters that have carried on a family's money lineage over time because they've inherited a lot of money. He's not wrong in saying that. But here is what is wrong in all of this. It is one thing for Bronny James to inherit his his father's personal business. If LeBron has built his wealth with separate companies outside of basketball, within basketball, if he becomes an owner of a Las Vegas franchise, then that's America. He can pass that wealth on to his son, and then he can run that NBA franchise when LeBron decides, or whatever it may be. But I'll keep going back to this. The reason we watch and love sports is that it's different than what we're talking about with nepotism across America. If you are someone who can't hit a curveball, but your father was Ted Williams, it doesn't matter that your dad was Ted Williams. If you can't hit a curveball, you're not going to play in the major leagues. You're just not going to make it that far. And we celebrate that because it takes talent, it takes the hard work, it takes all those things to make it and be a player in the top leagues across the country. And here we are now, I guess ESPN is celebrating someone who is circumventing that with Bronny James, and I just don't get it. And you're hard-pressed to call yourself a news organization when you have a line in your news story claiming that Bronny James has had a strong pre-draft process and elevated his standing from fringe to draftable prospect. I don't know the big difference between fringe and draftable, what you're talking about there. I feel like if you're on the fringe, you could also be labeled as maybe draftable. But none of that is really true in regards to Bronny James. The truth is, and Hutton laid it out there, is that he's LeBron James' son, and LeBron James pulls the strings. He is Geppetto for a lot of people across the league, a lot of organizations. Rich Paul helps him do that as well. ESPN is helping him in his cause in doing that, and they are puppeteering a lot of different situations to make sure that his son is drafted and in the league.
Well, here's Mark Spears literally last week on ESPN. And by the way, there have been plenty of quotes that would say the opposite in reports. Those reporting on the league that would say, hey, well, I've talked to this scout, I've talked to this organization. Here's NBA Scout 1, according to Mark Spears on ESPN in NBA Today. One scout says, quote, positional athlete doesn't function as an elite athlete. Should be a point guard based on his size, but he can't run an offense. Handicapped as a shooting guard because he can't shoot. He was 0 for 4 on threes one day, 1 for 3 on the other day. Needs screens to create space, and his only scoring came on paint touch floaters. He can only go left. His strength is supposed to be defensively, but he's a switch matchup. Every bigger player that switched onto him scored. His comp, a poor man's Davion Mitchell, and he's not an NBA prospect. That was from one NBA scout. Another one said, if the Lakers don't draft him, I don't think anyone will draft him. And teams would want him on a two-way, and I don't think Clutch would want that. So there goes the two-way report I was saying. So you got two NBA scouts through a credible NBA reporter on ESPN who is sitting there listening to the force-feeding compliments because Bronny handled questions well at the NBA Combine. That means all of a sudden he's a lottery pick. It's ridiculous. And, I mean, by the way, if I'm Jim Dolan, don't you draft him?
Oh, that would be funny. But one of my first thoughts on was, so not a Knicks fan?
Yeah.
I guess we're going to cross
the
Knicks off the list with that little shot at Jim Dolan. You know, Jim Dolan's dad was a great businessman. But, yeah, Jim Dolan runs the New York Knicks. That would be funny if the Knicks then drafted Bronny James just out of spite. They don't even care about the draft pick. Like, out of spite, we're going to take him now.
Think about what LeBron is capable of here. If he gets his son drafted, which, by the way, he said that he wanted to play for his son. That was his dream. It's been obvious, this whole thing.
But his son claims that was never his dream.
Sure.
LeBron has talked about it being a dream of his and wanting it, but his son acts like, oh, no, that's not what I thought about.
The prince is following the king's orders here because he's going to work out right now for two organizations. He's not going to go and play another season of college basketball. He's going to be a one and done. Think about that. One and done.
And he's following his dad's orders, but also if his dream is to play in the NBA and he wants to do it right now, the only way that he's going to do it is by following his dad's orders because it's his dad that's getting him drafted.
Or work out for every team and prove that you're a draftable player.
Yeah.
And which he's not doing.
He's got no interest in doing that because deep down he knows he's not.
Well, right. And he's taking that path. Then you have LeBron.
Or he's delusional.
LeBron, who's also saying that he wants in whenever the Vegas franchise is available. He'll get that too. If you get his son drafted, he'll get any franchise he wants. And so he'll be the Las Vegas NBA franchise owner at some point. And I'm sure Bronny will be playing for that organization too in 2 or 3 years from now.
And LeBron would argue that we're just a bunch of grown-ass men that have nothing better to do than to shoot down his son's dreams. I'm not doing that at all. If his dream is to play in the NBA, I hope he works hard, and I hope eventually he's an NBA player. The issue that I have with this from the beginning is he's not right now.
No,
and the only way he is going to be is that he's being force-fed to the league by his father, and then ESPN doing the bidding of his father, and they're going to organizations, and Rich Paul and his influence and all of that is the only way he's going to be an NBA player right now. I'd be all for Bronny going somewhere else, improving in the college game, getting better a year or two from now, and then getting drafted. I think that's a cool story that he worked his way up into being an NBA player. He's not it right now. He's not it, and if anyone believes he is, they're lying to themselves. Could he be in 3 years on an NBA roster? Yeah, sure, maybe. If he's developed the right way, that's a possibility, but he's not right now. And he's not a draftable prospect right now.
No, but he's going to be drafted. All signs point to being drafted instead of just an undrafted free agent signing a two-way contract with the team. Chad?
Because Rich Paul says, no.
Right.
Now, you're not going to have that.
Rich Paul, who says nepotism. Why don't we talk about Jim Dolan? Rich Paul has his job because of LeBron James.
Yeah.
And
He'll do his bidding.
A lot of people in the NBA have their job because of LeBron James.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of coaches have been fired because of LeBron James. A lot of super teams have been made.
A lot of coaches have been hired because of LeBron James, too.
No doubt.
Including J.J. Redick, about to be hired.
Chad, no more charges for Scottie Scheffler. Today, in a court hearing, instead of just dropping it outside of court, they went to court, and we heard from Jefferson County District Attorney Mike O'Connell, who says why he's dropping charges against Scheffler.
First responsibility of a prosecutor under Rules 3.8 of the Kentucky Supreme Court rules requires that prosecutors, and I quote, refrain from prosecuting a charge that the prosecutor knows is not supported by probable cause. Therefore, based upon the totality of the evidence, my office cannot move forward in the prosecution of the charges filed against Mr. Scheffler. Mr. Scheffler's characterization that this was, quote, a big misunderstanding, close quote, is corroborated by the evidence. The evidence we reviewed supports the conclusion that Detective Gillis was concerned for public safety at the scene when he initiated contact with Mr. Scheffler. However, Mr. Scheffler's actions and the evidence surrounding their exchange during this misunderstanding do not satisfy the elements of any criminal offenses.
So charges dropped, which included a, Class C felony, I believe, in all this. Big misunderstanding. Scheffler is taking the high road. Statement released by him earlier today. We'll get that up in just a moment. But he's taking the high road, saying he holds no ill will against Brian Gillis, who was the arresting officer, the detective on the scene that day. And he said he was informed by his attorney that all charges were formally dismissed at Valhalla. And he goes, as I stated previously, this is an unfortunate misunderstanding. I had no ill will towards Officer Gillis. I wish to put this incident behind me and move on, and I hope he will do the same. Police officers have a difficult job, and I hold them in high regard. This was a severe miscommunication a severe miscommunication in a chaotic situation. I appreciate the support during the past 2 weeks, and I want to, again, encourage everyone to remember the real tragedy on May 17th. My thoughts and prayers with John Mills and his family, and I hope to personally offer my condolences now in that case, when that case is over. May John rest in peace. Thank you, Scottie. Well said by Scottie Scheffler. And another example there of living up to the standard that he set for himself, the version of the human being that we all think he is. Chad, misunderstanding there, but his attorney, Steve Romanis, well, he's pissed off for greatness.
No, here's what happens, is he is being interrogated after the most stressful situation of his life, right? And the officer is actually asking him leading questions and trying to get him to agree with them, okay? And that's why you don't talk to the police, because they are going to try to put words in your mouth. And that's exactly what they did.
But that was after he read his Miranda rights.
Of course, he didn't have to speak. But again, he asked to talk to the officer. He wanted to explain to him what happened. However, they are trying to get him to confess to something that he didn't do. And the video evidence shows he didn't do it.
And the new video evidence is why they dropped charges there. Chad, what the attorney's referring to and why he's saying you don't talk to police is what we're going to hear here, where you hear police audio of you've got Scheffler in the car speaking to authorities.
My tea time. Yeah. I had to loop all the way around that way. It took me about probably a half hour. Okay. So I pulled in here. The police officer up there told me to come the opposite way with the traffic and then come in. And as I was pulling in, my window was down, and the officer told me to stop. And as first of all, I did not know that he was a police officer. I thought he was one of the security guards that was mistaken. And as I was pulling by him, he grabbed my arm.
Stop right there. Why does it matter if he's a security guard or a police officer?
Because
if somebody's telling you to stop.
Yes, you're right. I should have stopped. I did get a little bit impatient because I'm quite late for my tea time. And as he was reaching in the car, he grabbed my shoulder and hit me. Like
Trying to get you to stop, right?
yes.
Okay.
It seemed to be a little bit over aggressive because the entrance was open.
Okay.
And I pulled a little bit because I was afraid. I thought he was going to start hitting me, and I didn't know who he was. He didn't tell me he was a police officer. All I saw was the yellow jacket. I didn't know what he was doing. I listened to another police officer.
So the thing is, he's wearing a uniform. Okay. He also is wearing the same jacket that I have on that says police.
Yes.
Okay. Also, on that, if someone's telling you to stop, no matter who it is, you don't keep going. So what happened is, you kept going and you took him with you while he's a pedestrian. Okay.
Yes,
so you took him with your car
Yes.
and drug him. Okay.
Yeah.
Which is not a good thing,
I'm
right?
very aware that was
To
not
make
a good
it
thing.
so, listen to me. So make it even worse. When he asked you to get out of the car, you refused to get out of the car.
I still was not aware he was a police officer. I was actually looking out the window of the car to try to find a police officer. I asked.
We're all right here, and
I
he was there.
Believe me, sir. If I knew
We're all wearing yellow vests so you can see us.
If he knew he was a police officer, I would have been much more less afraid. But panic kind of set in. As you can see, I'm still shaking because I was afraid. I didn't know who he was. He didn't say, police, get out of the car. He just hit me with his flashlight and yelled, get out of the car.
We're wearing a lot of police gear. That surely signifies that we're the
believe
police.
me, if I knew he was a police officer, I would have gotten out of the car. I don't know what to tell you other than I was a little bit panicked trying to get into the golf course, and now I don't know what to do.
Let's go back to the first point, okay? No matter if you thought it was a police officer or not, somebody. Why are we wearing yellow vests? Why do you think we're wearing yellow vests? So you can see us, right?
Yes.
So you can see us, and if somebody tells you to stop, if it's a traffic guard, security guard, anybody, that means you stop at that time and you don't keep going.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so stuff like this doesn't happen.
Yes.
Because you actually hurt him, and he's a police officer.
Yes.
He's got a huge scrape on his knee. He's getting checked by EMS, big bruise. So I don't know. But for you right now, the main question is if you're going to jail, and it's up to him. I don't know.
Am I able to speak with him?
No, not at this time.
What a cluster. What a cluster. And, you've got one officer speaking to Scheffler in the car. The arresting officer is Brian Gillis, who we still haven't heard from in all of this. No, you can't speak to him. You're going to jail. Meanwhile, all the evidence that, we played the videos last week, all the evidence that the attorney is saying, the district attorney is saying that charges were dropped for a reason of probable cause. That means Scottie Scheffler is saying they're telling the truth, and the arresting officer exaggerated the incident as much as he did chasing after Scheffler in his vehicle and holding on to it to the point where he ruined a pair of $80 pants.
And he hit him with a flashlight, according to Scottie Scheffler also.
You can see him swinging.
Trying to stop him and swing at him. I am a believer that if you do what the police officers say and you're doing the right thing, it's normally going to work out for you, and you just need to listen to cops when they're trying to serve and protect. I'm firmly a believer in this. Here's one of those exceptions where that's not the case. I hear Scottie Scheffler and how calm he is and direct he is and respectful he is to this officer who's saying things, quite frankly, that doesn't make a lot of sense at times. What does it matter if he's a police officer or a security guard? It matters a lot. Security guards don't arrest people. Security guards and police officers are different. Okay, so if someone that's just a security guard is wielding a flashlight at you and reaching into your vehicle and striking you, my response is different than if it's a police officer, if I think one's different from the other. And I think the cop that's saying that would probably agree that police officers are different from security guards. At least I would hope that he does, because he is, in fact, a police officer. Hutton, you said this is a cluster. This is just poor police work after the fact. It's an overreaction from one police officer, and I think it was pretty easy to see that Scottie Scheffler, in his dealings with the cops, he showed an amazing amount of restraint. He didn't get an attitude one time. He didn't pull the, do you know who I am?
He complied.
He didn't pull, hey, I'm the number one golfer in the world. I'm trying to get you. He didn't do any of that. He
tried to have Darlington help him.
He also wanted to go apologize to the guy. Can I go speak to him? No, you can't speak to him. He's with EMS right now, and it's his decision on whether or not
the
you go
yellow
to jail.
jackets right there. I mean,
I don't want to look. I'm not trying to litigate this thing out and say, oh, boy, this is a real condemnation on the institution of policing in America or anything like that, or it's this or that. I'm telling you in this one specific instance, here is someone who I think was we hear now, was extremely respectful and trying to do the right thing. It was a giant misunderstanding, and he still ended up in jail. Now, the charges were dropped eventually, but he ended up in jail, and I don't think that's necessarily right.
In jail, then goes to shoot 66. I mean, It's amazing that he went through all of that and shoot 66. And we mentioned last week, Chad, his brand overall is going to skyrocket, and it has off of this. And he's taken the high road, and that's, props to Scottie Scheffler on how all of this has gone down. And this isn't just some new officer on the scene, some new detective on the scene that overreacted. This is a veteran arresting officer in Brian Gillis with a long history of being on the scene and traffic incidents, like the one with the fatality that they were having to handle on that morning in the rain at dawn. Crazy, though, the line, like the climb that it took, just based on the video that we saw, the speed, he was racing off. And we've still yet to hear from the other group of reported security officers, security guards, that were motioning them forward to get them in, because they normally don't enter through gate 1, gate A, which is where I believe where they had them going that day. Again, craziness. And I'll say the same thing. Ask the same question. I wonder what Brian Gillis is up to right now.
Well, there was some sort of corrective action, I think is the way they phrased it, for not turning on his body cam.
Right.
I wonder if there's more corrective action. I don't.
They dropped
I'm
the
not one to
charges
call
ultimately.
for like public servants jobs left and right, but this was just very poorly handled by everyone. And I think other. And look,
here's the benefit of the doubt for me. The other officers are handling a fatality.
Right.
They're not there to usher in golfers to Valhalla.
Correct.
So if they're covering and they're handling that part of their job, which I wouldn't want, they're not in the rain. They're not paying attention to the entrance of Valhalla right there. They're going by what the arresting officer says happened. And by the time you turn around and see the commotion, my guess is you're going based on what the report says or what the report will say. And that's what everyone followed up until the district attorney said, yeah, there's not probable cause here.
Yeah, and that goes back to Officer Gillis and all this. And I'm not an expert on policing, but just like you said, you're there to handle a fatality and make sure that things are operating okay around it. Yeah. I don't know that that's the time to jump a guy's car who's going about 4 miles per hour into the entrance and bang him with a flashlight.
I'm not saying he should. I'm not defending him.
To arrest him in that time. That seems like you're taking away from the main thing.
I'm listening to the officer in the car with him.
Yeah.
Talk to him. And he's getting that version of the story.
Correct.
So
I just also think, what does it matter if he's a security guard or a cop? Well, it matters. Yeah. I was robbed by someone in Spain pretending to be a cop. Wasn't. It looked like a security guard or a cop. Patted me down and took my wallet. I'm here to tell you it's a difference.
What did they...
It's a difference if you think someone just looks like a cop or is a security guard or is a rent-a-cop as opposed to an actual cop.
They came up and frisked you?
Yeah, I was getting onto a train and someone stepped off the train. I was the first one getting on in Madrid, and they were in all black and had something official and started patting me down. So I'm thinking... I've got all my luggage, everything coming up.
So you just did...
I thought everybody's going to get frisked on this plane or on this train on the way in, and instead they took my wallet. So there's a difference there.
When did you realize you didn't have it?
This guy wasn't impersonating an officer, but I'm just here to verify there's a difference between the two.
When did you realize you didn't have your wallet?
I realized when my buddy said, I think that guy tried to take my wallet.
Oh,
and
he felt it.
And then he stopped him. He swatted his hand.
Yeah.
And then I reached down. I said, well, he got mine. That was the response. And he got mine.
How much money was in there?
Not much. It was the end of the trip.
Oh, good.
I'd already spent all my money. I didn't have much to begin with. I was in college.
Well, yeah. But
so he got whatever was left, but, it was...
He picked the wrong wallet.
Yeah, I was like, you guys have got to get my meals here at the airport until we fly out or whatever else. I'll hit you back. That was the way it went.
Well, your
down.
ID, your identification in there, all that for your flight?
I had
you
my
your passport.
Passport was in my front pocket,
thank
so he
goodness.
didn't get that. Yeah, thank
goodness.
God.
Chad, Ronald Acuna is going to miss the rest of the season for the Braves, the torn ACL. And you've been questioning what the Braves are about this season based on some pitching and some other issues. But the loss of Acuna means what?
Well, losing Spencer Strider was big. The Braves have somehow recovered pitching-wise to have, I think, the second-best ERA in baseball. That's kept them 10 games above 500, miraculously, because their offense has been bad pretty much throughout. And this is a team that was the 27 Yankees a year ago from a slugging percentage standpoint. And they've completely fallen off a cliff this year, and they're not hitting the ball well. Ronald Acuna Jr.'s journey is fascinating. He goes from tearing his right ACL 2 years ago to becoming the first player ever to join the 40-70 club, bashing over 40 home runs, stealing over 70 bases, and winning the National League MVP a year ago, to starting this season batting .250 with only 4 home runs at this point, 15 RBIs and 16 stolen bases, playing below average defense, and then tearing his left ACL this year. So Ronald Acuna Jr., what is viewed as maybe the most team-friendly contract in the history of baseball, where the Braves have him locked up in years 26 through 30, age 26 through 30, at $14 to $17 million a year, where Aaron Judge makes $40 million a year. And Acuna Jr. has been a transcendent talent for the Braves. That goes from looking like the most team-friendly deal ever to my fear right now that Ronald Acuna Jr. is cooked as a player. This is both ACLs. And this coincides the start of a season where, by his lofty standards, he's been awful. He really has been awful to start this season. And now he's torn his other ACL. So, and I agree. Everyone's going to look at that and say, boy, the Braves really hosed their superstar when he signed this contract. I'll just look out and say, well, they may not have him that much longer. I don't know what he's going to come back and be after this. I know guys come back from ACLs. He came back from the one ACL fine. Came back and had a record-breaking season. But now this year he's fallen off, and now this happens. He's not going to be a base stealer. I think after 2 torn ACLs, you're not going to have another 70-plus stolen base season. Is he going to be a great base runner? I don't know. But all this talk about team-friendly deal, and it was, and it still is right now, but I look at it and thinking, first off, awful break for Ronald Acuna Jr. This is not his fault.
Is this overcompensation
in any way,
in
but
the
it's
rehab?
just this is why contracts, even when it looks great, may not turn out to be as good as people think.
Yeah.
In the long run because of this. Here's what also sucks for Ronald Acuna Jr. He was negotiating right now for an extension, possibly this year, where the Braves were going to tear up that contract and give him an extension that could have been between $300 and $500 million is what he would have been making. And now he's torn his other ACL. And that puts all of that in jeopardy.
Yeah,
and
that's more than a season.
He's going to have to come back next year and prove it again. I'm not saying he's got to replicate the NL MVP season, but he's got to be a lot closer to that than the way he started this season. And my Braves are on a struggle bus right now.
You said they can't hit.
They can't. They win 2-0 last night, I think. They cannot hit. They cannot score runs. Matt Olson has been a disappointment so far. Austin Riley has been hurt, and when he plays, he's been a disappointment. Ozzie Albies has been a disappointment. Everyone but Marcell Ozuna has been pretty bad for the Braves as compared to last season. So they got to pick it up. I feel awful for Ronald Acuna Jr., but also look very differently at that contract right now with him.